one of the big problems that we have is a undersupply of housing. So
Mhm.
right now in California, there's a bunch of laws like SB9 where you do lot splits, where you build ADUs, but the whole premise of all these initiatives is to build more housing. So I know you in the beginning you talked about like, hey, this is the existing zoning. But have you ever come across any situation where you're looking to, hey, how do I get more density? How do I get more units into this area, whether it's at market rate or not? Who cares? Because we just need more supply in general. So tell us a little bit about how you specifically approach getting more density if it's beyond what the current zoning allows.
Yeah. I think what we would do is show the city the feasibility of it. We would show them why this project would work in this area, why we would show them again a site plan. And I think showing pretty pictures helps a lot. Like, and if you could go as far as to show them renders, that would be
Oh
awesome.
wow.
We don't go that far, but that is something I've seen on a couple like a couple of series I was watching on land development, like where they were making virtual reality places of the build that they're going to do. That would be pretty cool to show the city, and I think that would honestly really change their heart a lot. But for now, what most people do is we just show them a site plan that has colors. We show them where the green area is going to be, the parks. We show them if there's going to be a pool. We show them the streets, the homes, and we basically show them that in this specific site, it would make more sense to have higher density and more units. And we show them that we could do it without compromising on quality. And from there, I mean, the first foundation is they have to be open to it. If the city doesn't want development, then they're not going to be open to higher density. But if they're wanting to grow their development scene and they're wanting to have more homes, and we show them, hey, this is how we would do it, it fits. It has an affordable section. It has a section with larger units. It has everything mixed around. This is why we think we should do this. They probably would consider a variance at that point, but you would then have to convince the city council, and that is something I've only touched on a little bit and seen how obviously the neighborhoods react and the people involved around the area react. And so I don't have much experience with that yet, but I would probably just take the same approach of just showing them why we believe this is a good project and why it would benefit their community.
Okay, that's a great approach. And I love the theme of preparation has stuck with you throughout the entire, it's a through line for everything that you've talked about today. It's always being prepared, whether
Yeah.
that is you looking at the municipal code before the meeting, whether that is bringing a preliminary site plan to that meeting to show people. And I love that you brought up like, hey, if you can show a picture or renderings, like a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? This
Yeah.
is exactly that same concept. So now you've gotten these conversations and you spoke a little bit about variance. I don't want to jump over this because not a lot of people even understand what a variance is. Can you explain to people what does a variance mean and how do you actually get a variance from your city?
Yeah. So a variance is basically the city giving you a legal authority to deviate from their blueprint, or from what they want in that area. So say if the setback in that area is 10 feet and you need a 9-foot setback in order to fit all the units that you have, a variance would be getting the legal authority to do that. And I think getting a variance is complicated, and most of the time you won't need one. Um, as we're getting to higher and higher density, it does present itself sometimes. And there's other scenarios where you need a variance because there's so many municipal codes. And sometimes the city is willing to compromise on one because it was maybe written with old infrastructure in mind or it no longer applies. But I think the process changes from city to city because it's a legal process and it is very what's the word? It's just very specific and it's a very intentional process because the city put the code in for a reason, and so to deviate from it, it has to be for a good reason. And so I haven't done it too many times that I know the ins and outs of it, but I would again, it's the same thing as before. You'd come prepared. With this one, especially come legally prepared
Oh,
and
so good.
coordinate with the city and see what they're interested in.
Yeah, because you might need to get like a land use attorney involved. I mean, usually a variance, how I understand it, is usually a variance might be like one or two or three deviations from like the zoning item.
Yeah.
Like you have to get it granted by the zoning board. But some cities, they say, hey, if you are trying to get something rezoned for higher density or change it from industrial to residential, you might need like city council votes
Yeah,
to
you
make
get the
that
city
happen.
council approval. Yeah.
Yeah, so now all of a sudden you're dealing with a different sort of agency or authority in order to
Mm,
get your project approved, and that brings about different levels of complexity. As a developer, you have to understand what does that do to your timeline? What does that do
mm,
to your resources? Because if you have to say, "Hey, this X team cannot get start working on this thing until we get approval from this agency or this city council or this zoning board,"
mm,
like that's all the sequencing that you have to think about. And to your point, you got to be agile because every single city might have different stance on
mm.
a variance or a zoning exemption, etc.
Yeah.
Like those are the different items that you have to consider as a developer. Okay. All right. So, Jared, sounds like what kind of projects have you typically worked on? Have you typically worked on like single family builds, multifamily apartment ground up deals? Like, tell us a little bit more about the spectrum of the different types of deals that you have done.
Yeah. So when I first worked with a civil engineer, I was processing the entitlements for a really wide range of projects. There's some industrial, some commercial, some residential. And as I developed into a land developer, we currently do infill single family homes. And so what infill means is it's basically if you see a blank piece of land in a highly developed area, we're interested in building that one. Because just something we squeeze in. There's usually some problem with it. That's why it's been open and raw this whole time. And we're willing to coordinate and figure out what that problem is. And we'll do anywhere from 5 to 80 homes on those lots.
Got it. And usually these are 580 homes, like single family homes,
Yeah.
essentially? Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Interesting. And what kind of problems do you typically run into on those info laws? Because to your point, right? Some people have stayed away from it. You say, "Ha, I'm super organized. I know what I'm doing. I know how to have the conversations. Let's go tackle this problem."
I think something that is constantly a problem on a lot of projects is water.
Mm,
And whether it's maybe in a floodway or how to actually get the utilities to the project. Because getting utilities to a project is something you just don't think about. I mean, when you're young, I guess, like when I was young, I just like imagine, like, I'm thinking, like, oh, like they just come, like they're just there. The city just has it mapped out. It's going to work out. But most of the time, the utility connections are really far, or if they're downhill, the project is mostly not going to happen. But sometimes you can figure it out and get a pump station in there and get the utilities up. But yeah, I think the biggest problem that would come up is getting utility connections and seeing if there's a floodway in your project, which would just kill it immediately.
got it. All right, so it's in a floodway. That's a no-go. But if there is, you said downhill, right? Like, what does that mean? Explain that for the audience.
Yeah,
If downhill
so
doesn't work.
yeah, so if say the utility lines that go to your project are below the actual level that your project's on, so say it's like maybe a couple streets down and there's a slope, in order to get the utility lines up there, you have to either generate the pressure to get it up or you have to have a pump station to renew the pressure to get it up to your site. And so
Exactly.
and
Because
so
if the
that can
water
be
is down the
complicated.
hill, you have to pump the water up because that's how gravity works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's just such a simple thing, but it presents itself as such a huge problem because it's really expensive to get the utility lines up because then you have to trench. Sometimes you have to trench really far if there isn't a utility line actually connected to that area, and then you have to do street improvements and all sorts of things that just you wouldn't expect.
And that costs so much money. I mean,
Yeah.
give people a sense of how much it will cost, like to put in either some. I'm assuming you've gotten quotes for some of these things, where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
you gotta build a pump station to generate the pressure to go upwards, and then you got to do all the trenching, you got to coordinate. I'm sure there's a bunch of fees. Give us a little bit of sense of like what it costs to get utilities into a site.
Yeah. Um, I'm not too good on coordinating that one because we have a specific team member who does that, and he's really incredible with the numbers. And he knows how much people typically quote, and he's able to coordinate in that way. So I typically don't stay too much in that one because he's very good at what he does in that regard. It's pretty cool. But
Interesting.
I guess another example that I did catch wind of is for undergrounding the power lines. There's been
Oh yeah.
quotes from SCE that were like a $500,000, and it was an incredible amount of it was basically just a gray area where they're like, "Hey, we don't know if we're going to use all this money, but you're going to have to give us all this money, and we may give it back." And so working with Edison in that way can be a little daunting.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen neighborhoods where they do work on putting the power lines into the ground, and
Yeah,
it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of neighborhood disruption, if you will. But
yeah.
sometimes that, because you don't have the appearance of utility lines above ground, sometimes it makes the neighborhood more valuable because people don't like seeing power lines outside their houses,
Oh
which
yeah,
is,
and it's a legal requirement now. You
oh
have to
yeah.
anytime you build, you have to underground all the power lines.
Oh, all of them, huh? Okay.
Yeah,
Even if existing power lines are there, you
yeah,
can't just tap into it. You have to underground it now.
yeah. If it's on your property, you have to underground it.
I did not know that for California. So I
Yeah,
don't develop personally in California. So that makes a lot of sense. Oh my goodness. Wow.
yeah.
Okay,
It's an expensive. That's probably one of the biggest expenses in the project is undergrounding those lines.
man, you have dropped so many nuggets. You have taught people so much today. Jared, I gotta ask you. So when I started this podcast, Jared, people have always said, "Kent, you're never gonna be able to solve affordable housing. If you could have done it, like why couldn't somebody else do it?" And
Mm.
part of the reason is I don't think a lot of people surface information about development, how to build more housing, and honestly, just pull back the curtain on all the problems that you have talked about today. And I view you as such a key piece of that puzzle, Jared. So, like, I want to hear from you. Like, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, has just been so hard to solve for? What's your perspective?
I think honestly, there's a couple things that come to my mind. The first one would be there's a lot of municipal fees that go into building a home. There's development impact fees. There's fees that have like just it's called a building permit fee, but it's not the review fee. It's just a fee that basically is an umbrella for a ton of different municipal fees. There is a new fee coming in supposedly that's for a vehicles miles travel study, which basically just studies how your project will affect traffic in the area. And there's solar requirements. And so I guess like to summarize, it's the fees and requirements that California specifically implements that are extremely expensive, and their long-term sustainability, I don't know if it's established enough to justify how expensive they are.
Man, so it's just everything is kind of just stacked against more housing supply being created with this caveat at an affordable rate. Because you can't
Yeah,
say, hey, go build, but you have to do X, 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 underground your utilities, X, 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 put in solar, X, X, X. And now all of a sudden, how do you make something that's affordable? Because look, at some point, a developer has to make a little bit of profit, right? There just needs to be financial incentives. And
yeah,
to build a home for someone, like some people will always just say like, oh, these hungry developers, these greedy developers. But I would argue, hey, if it's reasonably priced, at the same time, like we use our iPhones every single day. We use our cell phones every single day. Do we not think that Apple profits off of that? Like, come on. Like for something that you use for 10, 12 hours a day, like your home that you live in, why can't the person that built that thing for you make a little bit of money? It for some reason it just escaped people's purview of
Yeah.
what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Yeah, yeah, developers definitely get a pretty bad reputation in that way with the general public. But it is I would say it's really not justified, especially here in California, because I think developers here deal with so many requirements, and the profit margin is just smaller and smaller and smaller, that it's almost more of a service. But in terms of getting the affordable housing, like what I would change is maybe just it's such a big overhaul that it's almost infeasible, but if there was a way to coordinate with just I don't know, it's really tough because each municipality has their own fees. So if you were to work with California and work on a more sustainable way of divvying fees and why we have these fees or how we can help in other ways, I think that would be probably the best way, and that is what the BIA is currently doing. They coordinate with the local municipalities to make building more sustainable. Um, but I think that's what I would do. And then there's another aspect to that, which is known as like not in my backyard. And it's like people don't want affordable housing near them, which is really unfortunate. Um, because and I think maybe educating people on why affordable housing in particular can benefit a community would kind of change that stigma.
Thank you so much, Jared. Dude, this is what a great answer. And it kind of shines a light on all the items that are stacked against the developer, but also sometimes the misinformation that might be out there about what affordable housing is. Sometimes it's just housing for working class families that
Yeah.
just like my mom who was just trying to put food on the table that just needed some help to get by at a reasonable rate because homes are just way too expensive. And
Yeah,
if
there are
we
a lot.
don't work together to solve this problem, then the hopes of owning a home for almost the next generation might be completely off the tables. So, Jared, I'm so glad you came onto the podcast today. I'm so glad you shared so much valuable information about what it means to be in the development process. Dude, it was such a good masterclass on just learning everything and how to conduct yourself in meetings and how to prepare yourself for the world development. This was so good, man. I had so much fun in this conversation. Jared, for people that want to reach out to you or learn more from you, like how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think the best way to get in touch with me is probably through my LinkedIn. I'm really active on my LinkedIn. So if you just look up my first and last name and shoot me a connection request, I'd love to shoot you my email or my phone number and we could chat.
Sounds good. And Jared, what kind of opportunities are you looking for, like on behalf of your company? Like, what I know you mentioned info lots earlier. Is that what you're looking to acquire more of? Like, what can people do to bring you opportunities?
Yeah, yeah. I think if people have raw land that they know of and that they'd be interested in selling, we would love to take a look at it. And that would probably be the main thing that we'd be looking for.
And what market are you specifically looking in, like city or counties?
Specifically somewhere within the Inland Empire or the low desert, like in terms of Palm Desert, Palm Springs, La Quinta. So anywhere in that area, if they have any raw land and they would like to sell it, we would love to take a look at it.
And is it has to be a certain size for that to qualify for your criteria?
Yeah, I think it would probably we'd want something at least 2 to 3 acres and larger. The
Got
upper
it.
bound of that limit is kind of to be determined. So if they were to bring it to us, we could coordinate. We could always cut a piece off if it's too big for us.
Got it. All right. Jared, this has been fun, man. I'm so glad you came onto this podcast. I had so much fun with you, dude. I cannot wait to bring you back on a podcast, maybe like a year, dude, just to hear more about the projects that you're working on. This is gonna be so dope.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate you bringing me on. I'm obviously a youngin in the industry, and so I appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to chat.
All right, sounds good, man. And we are out.